Hello learners, I am Farhad Hossain, Associate Professor and the Chairman of the Department of English, Mahmudpur Central University College. After a long since, I have appeared before you through information technology because we have been suffering from a certain kind of problem, that is the COVID-19, which is not only the problem of an individual country, it is a global problem. And that is why almost all the educational institutions all over the world are already exactly stagnant. We are not in a position exactly to execute or dispense our education programs to the learners. Mahmudpur Kendriya College has taken a certain kind of formidable step exactly to overcome this sort of situation, the deadlock which has been created particularly due to COVID-19. At the very outset, I'd like to felicitate and express my gratitude to our principal, Honorable Principal, Sir Zafar Ali, who left no stone unturned exactly to continue the process of dispensing education. And that is why he frequently exactly addressing meeting through information technology, and chairman of the department and other chairman of the department, several departments, and the common teachers are also attended this sort of meeting. We are discussing the system, how we can exactly communicate our education programs to the learners. And consequently, I have today appeared before you. Today, I have come to you with a very important topic, which is very important for your understanding of the colonial and post-colonial literature. And that is why I would like to deliver a speech on the background of colony, the expansion of colony, particularly in Asia and especially in India, because colonial expansion has been related to literature, trade, commerce, and culture, which has created a certain kind of impact, particularly in the life of the people of this subcontinent, that is, Indian subcontinent. The history of colony is a very interesting one. The colony has been expanded in Asia, Africa, and in this subcontinent, that means Indian subcontinent, expanded by the navigators. The first navigator who came to India is Vasco da Gama, who was a very innovative man who had been trying for a certain period of time to find out or to discover the sea route of India from Europe. Because the European navigators had already come to know that there was an ample opportunity of expanding the market of Indian spices, silk, cotton, steel, and other commodities, which had a very, very expanded market in Europe. And it was their first objective exactly for the European navigators to come to India, to take this sort of commodities and to make the marketing of these goods in Europe. Though it was the first target, exactly, the trading was the first target for the expansion, first target of expanding the colonial navigator. But thing is that there was another thing behind this objective of navigation. And Vasco da Gama was a very, very intelligent man. He envisaged one thing. When he arrived in the coastal area of India, particularly the seaport of Calicut, he could realize that there was a very great opportunity to establish a certain kind of colonial expansion in the coastal area of India, because the thing is, it was very clear to him that the Indian monarchs and kings were totally ignorant and could not feel the necessity of introducing a strong naval power exactly to make a defensive measure against the European navigators. So it was a very easy process, it seemed to Vasco da Gama, exactly to occupy the coastal area. And that is why he exactly made a friendly gestures to the colonial people, and the people of Goa, Daman, Diu and Koche received him cordially. And Vasco da Gama continued there from 1597 to 1599. More than 1 year he continued in India, particularly in coastal area, and it was his great opportunity exactly to study the feasibility of the future establishment of colony in Indian coastal area especially. And Vasco da Gama was a Portuguese navigator, but he did not stay the coastal area of India for a long time. What was the reason behind this? We don't know. The man who exactly continued a certain period of time for the first time in the coastal areas of India, he was Magellan. He became the Portuguese governor of this coastal area for a certain period of time. And then another person came whose name was Albuquerque. Albuquerque, he became the Portuguese governor of Goa, Daman, Diu and Cochin. But he was a brutal man. His brutal manner of brutality exactly was not accepted by the coastal people. And they invited the Arab traders and Arab troops exactly to make an arms conflict against every person. And there was a particular arms conflict taking place in Bay of Bengal. And ultimately what we saw that he was Syrian. Albuquerque was defeated and he was beheaded. But the Arab navigators could not exactly wipe out the Portuguese establishment, which was exactly settled down in the coastal areas of India. Later on, we see the Portuguese colony continued its course for a long time, and it is very interesting that it was continued even after 1947, after the independence of India. Even after the independence of India, it continued 1961. And Portuguese authority exactly who established the colony in Goa, Daman, Diu and Cochin, they were found obsessed in colonial sentiment of medieval colonial sentiment, and they did not have any sort of preparation to close the colonial establishment from the coastal areas of India. But it was a very irritation for an independent country like India. India became independent in 1947, but an independent state cannot allow any sort of colonial establishment, particularly in the 21st century. It is definitely a kind of irritation. And even Prime Minister of India, Jawaharlal Nehru, wanted to bring out a solution to this problem, just to see the removal of the colonial establishment in India, particularly from the coastal area, but through negotiation, through diplomatic endeavors. For the first time, he made an appeal to be the British Prime Minister to negotiate this matter and to convince the Portuguese establishment in Goa, Daman, Diu and Cochin. But the governor of Goa, Daman, Portuguese governor of Goa, Daman, Diu, Cochin was not found agreed exactly to draw the conclusion of the colony from the coastal area. And Nehru exactly made an appeal to the United Nations organization. United Nations organization also tried the level best exactly to convince and to make understand the Portuguese establishment in India. But they were unconvinced. And finally, finding no other alternative, Prime Minister Nehru consulted this matter with his cabinet members and the military generals and took a decision of military action exactly to remove the colonial establishment from India. And one fine morning in 1961, a very, very smart and skilled general was selected particularly to start the military campaign for the removal of the colonial establishment from Goa, Daman, Diu and Cochin. And Major General Pilot Kandeh, who was a very brilliant military officer and made outstanding bravery and courage, particularly in the Second World War, was selected for the military campaign. He exactly launched the infantry artillery simultaneously and and air striking as well as the naval attack, where a naval attack launched at the same time. One fine morning in 1961, yes, the Portuguese establishment, Portuguese governors and Portuguese troops saw that there was a heavy military attack from Indian side, and they found very helpless. They could not make any articulate or formidable defensive measure against Indian army, and ultimately Goa, Daman, Diu, Cochin had been vacated. This is the story, shortly, the colonial establishment, the story of the colonial establishment of India. But I would like to conclude telling one thing, that in the mid of the 17th century, the controlling of the sea road had been changed. The scenario took a certain kind of change, and which was in favor of the British. In the mid of the 17th century, the British naval power started controlling the whole sea route of the world. And in the beginning of the 18th century, it was clarified that the British became the master of the sea route of all over the world. And not only that, their colonial expansion was greater than any other European power. And it was a common proverb during the time in the lip-sync of the world community that the sun does not set in the British Empire. When the British occupied India, at the same time America was under the British colonial rule. When it is the day in India, it is night in America. So the proverb was very much correct. The thing is that all the colonial powers exactly had been almost removed. A mini-sized colony was established by Portuguese in the coastal area, and at the same time in Pondicherry, France continued the colonial power. Except these small regions, the British controlled whole India. And not only that, they exactly established their administration that is known as the British Raj in India, and it was continued more than 190 years, which created serious impact in our economy, in our culture, in our history, in our politics, in everything. That is the short history of colony in India. I have delivered this speech because we have got a syllabus, particularly but in first year and second year students. They will have to study colonial literature, and before going to study colonial literature, the history of colony of the subcontinent should be understood and studied by the students of this particular years. And today, I'd like to draw the conclusion of my speech here, and next week, I'll appear before you with another episode. Particularly, I'd like to tell that in the coming week, yes, I'll appear before you with Alfred Tennyson, who was the representative poet of Victorian age. And Victorian age was a very colorful age for different capacities, for different events and reasons. And the British colony was expanded in the highest range during Victorian age. And that is why this age is very important, which will be discussed by tomorrow. And then, till then, Allah Hafiz.